Welcome to the latest live stream, Seahawks Draft Blog. Rob Staton, Robbie Williams with you here today, and we're going to talk about a few Seahawks topics for you. And remember, if you want to get involved, the way to do it is the Super Chats. That is the key to interaction today. If you want to make this a bit of a Q&A, if you want to throw some questions our way, then you need to do it via the Super Chat. As soon as we get a Super Chat question, we will prioritize those questions. We will go to them straight away. We will stop what we're talking about. We'll say, Robbie, you must stop. We are moving on to a Super Chat straight away. So if you want to get involved, that's what you need to do. So get those Super Chats into us tonight. It's tonight for me. It's mid-afternoon for Robbie in Seattle. Robbie, we've got a few things to talk about. We've got a schedule now that I want to ask you a little bit about, because when we spoke to Jeff last week, we kind of knew who the Seahawks were playing, but we didn't know the order in which they were playing. And I've got a few thoughts that have changed since seeing the old schedule come out there, because it looks particularly difficult at the start. And I always think that's interesting. I think a difficult start to your schedule can put you behind the eight ball quite quickly, but we'll get onto that in a little while. Let's just kick things off with the very basic, obvious topic, Robbie. The draft feels like it was 10 years ago now. How do you feel about the state of the Seahawks as we stand here today?
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, I feel pretty good. It's tough to really get a vibe on what's going on. I mean, you're reading kind of what's going on in rookie minicamp and these kind of things, and you get excited when you see something like D. Eskridge is as fast as people say, and he's super quick, and there's a little buzz around Daryl Taylor now that he's actually practicing, and there's just things like that. I mean, I don't know, like you read about how big Stone is and that he's just this big, massive, potential left tackle of the future. And, there's things to get excited about, but, this hype happens every year. So for me, it's always like, try to avoid the buzz too much, because you want to just, see what happens when, they put pads on, they actually are playing for real. And it'll be interesting to see only 3 preseason games. I mean, compared to having none last year, but it'll be, interesting to see only 3, because usually the 4th game is when you see a bunch of those guys getting a chance to shine. So as of right now, I feel pretty good. I mean, the schedule came out, and kind of we'll talk about it in a little bit, but yeah, I was kind of like, oh boy, it's not an easy task, that's for sure.
I saw the Daryl Taylor, it was a real Daryl Taylor week. Rookie minicamp ended up being Daryl Taylor camp, and he was put up for a press conference. A lot of the Pete Carroll press conference was dominated by Daryl Taylor talk. I have to say, Robbie, that I just feel like the Seahawks are really, really trying to get something out of this pick right now. I know that the Sam Leo, there's some crossover between those two positions, isn't there? And him suddenly playing Sam is not them trying to make him a middle linebacker or anything. This isn't like the last dregs of, oh my word, we've got to try and salvage this by giving him a completely different position. There is some crossover between Sam and Leo. But at the same time, Robbie, I kind of got the sense that when they drafted him, they were thinking they were getting this screaming pass rusher off the edge who could be their leading pass rusher, could essentially be what Frank Clark was for them. And already now it seems a little bit damage limitation when they're bringing in other guys like Alden Smith. They've obviously brought in Carlos Dunlap. They go and sign Kerry Hyder. That a lot of that as well is because they don't want to put him too much pressure on him, obviously, this year, coming back in what will essentially be his de facto rookie year. But I don't get anything. I don't feel any real, like, even when Pete Carroll's asked about it, is the leg injury behind him? Well, maybe it's a bit over optimistic or whatever. It's wishful thinking, I think was the term he used, but we're going to try and go with that. It all seems somewhat like this is trending towards, I don't think this is ever going to really work for him. I hope it does. I really hope it does. I hope he has a much better year than I think he's going to have, but I'm not optimistic.
I mean, I want to see him play. I mean, to be honest, like I didn't even think he would ever play. I mean, we've talked about this multiple times where we just don't think the guy will ever play. So, I mean, if he gets an opportunity to at least play on, get out there and play, that's what I want to see. I just want to see him get a chance and then see what he can do. But yeah, I mean, it feels a little suspect by what's been said and things. And it's interesting that, the move from the Leo position to the Sam position, but there's a lot of crossover there, and there's an opportunity for him to maybe shine, and that's an open competition right now with KJ not being back yet, or if he does come back. So that spot's open. We'll see who takes it.
Yeah, the KJ Wright thing continues to confuse me. I don't really know why he's not signed with anybody. It's one thing for him not to be back in Seattle. It's quite another for him not to be anywhere. And there's no buzz, there's no talk, which I can only assume means, Robbie, that he wants X amount, that teams are only offering this. And I just wonder if the ultimate conclusion is he says, if I'm not going to get a certain amount, then I'm not going to play. I mean, he is towards the end of his career. I mean, he's not suggested that that's what he's going to do. I suppose the minute you do that, you kind of retire yourself anyway, don't you? But he's clearly not saying, this is what my market is. I'm going to take what the market's telling me is there so I can play one more year. And the Seahawks don't. I mean, they've got 90 men on their roster right now. They're talking about other players playing the Sam. They've spent a first-round pick on Jordan Brooks a year ago. Let's not forget that. So they were already planning ahead. If they bring back KJ Wright, it's going to be as a Sam. And then, what do you do with his snaps? Because you don't want Jordan Brooks. You don't spend a first-round pick for a guy who plays a few snaps here and there at linebacker. You spend a first-round pick for somebody who starts. And if you're going to waste 2 years of Jordan Brooks because you retain KJ Wright, then you even more have to question the Jordan Brooks pick. If KJ Wright was going to continue starting, they're just going to wheel in every now and again Jordan Brooks. So they've kind of made the bed with that. They've got to commit to it to a certain extent. I've and many others have probably assumed that KJ Wright was going to come back. Where's the space for him now? Where is the space for KJ? Which is sad because he's a great guy. He's a very good player. He had a very good 2020 season. We all want to see him back. But where does he fit into this now?
Well, I mean, really, you don't know who's going to take over that Sam position, right? I mean, Jordan was taking over the other side of the line, and that's when he moved over to the Sam position. So it'd be interesting to see what they do if KJ comes back. But I mean, I think right now teams are probably just testing out who they have at linebacker and seeing, how these guys actually fit in their scheme. And if they don't work out, veterans seem to be able to shoot. Richard Sherman's still available. There's still a lot of good players out there. And so I think eventually they'll, after rookie mini camp, people will have a better understanding of kind of what they have and what they thought these people were and how they could fit in their scheme. And then they'll couple, a lot of these veterans will probably end up signing. That'd be my guess, but who knows? I mean, and if we bring back, KJ, it just means Daryl Taylor just isn't probably going to compete for that spot, maybe a backup role.
And then with Sherman, I don't know what you think, Robbie. I know obviously we were talking about it a lot. We talked about how much you'd both like to see Richard Sherman come back, but I'm accepting defeat on that one. I just think that Pete said it all the other day. He did a great job of trying not to say anything controversial while also saying they're probably not going to sign Richard Sherman. And when you draft a cornerback and you sign Pierre Desir, having already signed Akella Witherspoon, you've retained DJ Reed and Trey Flowers. That's a lot of cornerbacks now. And if Sherman comes in, you think, well, why would you have Sherman and Witherspoon and a draft pick and Desir and Trey Flowers and DJ Reed? It's a crowded room now. I'm thinking that I wonder what he's going to do, because there's no buzz with him either. Everyone's the league's just saying, I think your time's done, pal. There's just nothing at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, I read a little bit that San Francisco was still interested in bringing him back and as a possibility. And then, obviously the Jets were interested as well. I don't know, man. You say out these names and I'm like, yeah, some of these guys are okay, but man, for me, I'd rather have Sherm. To be honest with you, Witherspoon, Desire, whatever you say, however you say his name. And these guys don't strike me as guys that I'm like, oh yeah, these are the guys I for sure want. I'd rather have Sherm for 2 years, because I mean, these guys aren't probably going to be around, much longer than 2 years anyways, is my guess, So for me, give me Sherm for 2 years. And if we do end up signing him, it would be because, we get these guys in camp and realize that they just don't fit right. I mean, we've seen it happen with Kerry Williams. There's other players who come in who, we think have a shot and they just don't. And maybe Trey Flowers hasn't progressed. Maybe he's not getting any better. And they just see that as well. And they just realize his time has come. So I still think there's an opportunity, but yeah, I think you're right. The chances are much more slim at this point than they were, say pre-draft.
Yeah, and I prefer Sherman to, some of these names as well, but I kind of feel like there's just a real made their bed, now they're sleeping in it vibe to this, that they've made their moves at cornerback. And yeah, that's a shame. And I get that same feeling, Robbie, at defensive line, defensive tackle as well. I think the minute that Al Woods came in for Jaron Reed, that was that. And look, that's fine. If they're going to use more bare fronts and if it's going to be three big guys and that's what they're going to do this year, we'll see how it goes. And if they're going to blitz Jamal Adams till his arms fall off, then fair enough. That we'll see how that all plays out. I have voiced reservations on this many times, but if that is what they're going to do, that's what they're going to do. But I always think, I was listening to John Gruden even saying it yesterday. He said it yesterday. I watched it today. He was saying, like, you win games up front and you have to create pressure. And everybody goes on about what the Seahawks had in 2013. People often forget what they also had was a tremendous defensive line with pass rush rotation off the edge, guys who could bring it inside. They had one guy in McDonald who could provide a bit of interior pass rush there. They had an all-rounder like Mebane. They had Red Bryant. They had a mix of everything in great depth. So when guys were hurt, that it didn't really hurt them too much. I look at the defensive line right now, and I think if you take Carlos Dunlap out of that defensive line, you've got issues. You've got serious issues. You get back into Benson Mayowa playing too many snaps, which he did at the start of last season. Doesn't make him effective. Kerry Hyder, I know a lot of people got excited about that. I still think he was a journeyman who was kind of like a second wave free agent who bounced around, and they signed him for like $2-3 million in the end, which is, he is what he is. A nice addition. Happy to have him. But let's not, when all these people were saying he's the second coming to Michael Bennett, I was like, come on, let's get back in the real world a little bit here. So I'm a little bit worried about the D-line. I think there's some depth issues at other positions, like running back, I think is another one. And I was really encouraged, Robbie. I don't know if you've seen any of him. BJ Emmons, who is the Florida Atlantic running back who used to be with Alabama. I thought he just looked like a Seahawks running back, very well-sized, explosive, breaks through tackles, the kind of guy they've had success with. And I think they need another one of those. I have absolutely no faith in Rashad Penny sticking it out, or I have the other guys, DJ and Travis Homer and all that. Yeah. Nice guys. Do I want them leading the rushing attack? No. No,
we've seen it. And we knew running back was going to be a position they should target. And, I haven't seen any out of the footage that you're talking about, but I mean, that is exciting to hear. I mean, it's good that we got some guys that look like Seahawks backs and are physical and, get right off the point of the attack and just get the football. I don't want Travis Homer toting the rock up and down the field when the game's on the line. He's just not the guy to do it for you. I mean, we saw it 2 years ago when they brought Marshawn back because Travis just wasn't filling the need. So yeah, I don't want to see that. Nice guys, but not who I want leading the way. You're muted, boy.
The mute button.
Yeah.
What a foe to everybody over the last 12 months. So my biggest issue with Travis Homer, I want to tell you, Robbie, I want to get your thoughts on this, is that he's essentially got a niche, which is he's good in pass protection and he can catch it on third down and stuff like that, which is fine. There's two perfectly good things to be okay at. But the problem is that in order for him to be somewhat effective, especially in that third down pass catchy kind of role, is you actually have to throw it to him at one point. And that's the issue, is that like next year, you are going to have like DK and Tyler and D. Eskridge and Gerald Everett and Will Disley and everybody like that. Okay. And then like there's going to be a game when they force a pass to Travis Homer in that situation just to keep everybody honest and like for the rest of the year. And when that happens, I am going to have my head in my hands. I think a lot of people will, but we know it's coming. They're going to do that. And this is why it's best to have a running back who can be like that like Marshawn's very good at catching passes. And Chris Carson's good at catching passes. And ideally, you have a guy that you don't have to take off the field and third down. Your third down back is just your back so that everything's kind of there and nothing changes. I kind of feel like when Travis Homer comes out onto the field, Russell might as well go, it's a pass, like to the defense. And then like, it just telegraphs everything. And like I say, if they force it to him when all those other guys are on the field and they don't convert, if they do convert, someone should shout at the TV because that will be very frustrating.
Well, maybe Shane Waldron won't allow that to happen. Well, maybe we'll see.
We will see. We will see. We've had a super chat, Robbie.
All right.
And again, a reminder that if you want to, people have been sending questions in, and I'm very happy to get into some of these maybe later on, but we are prioritizing the super chat. It is called super chat. The super chat is here from M Webb. Thank you for your support. Between Jordan Brooks, Puna, Blair, Penny, who are you most excited for? Excited is one way of describing it. Who do you think has the most breakout potential? Also, who are your guys' personal favorite players on the team? Love the show. Go Hawks. Thank you for that. So let's do the first bit first. Jordan Brooks, Puna, Blair, Penny. Who are you most excited for, Robbie?
Man, I'm pretty excited about Jordan Brooks. I mean, I really liked what he did last year. I'd like to see kind of what he does again. I think out of those guys that are listed, Jordan Brooks would be the guy I'm most excited about. Maybe Marquise Blair, just because I want to see a thumper on the team. And I think he has that potential. I'm worried about the injuries and such, so I want to. I'd like to see him play a full season. But man, for me, Jordan Brooks just looked fast and looked like he was getting better and better and better as the season went on. So I'd really like to, because I think ultimately he's going to end up at middle linebacker replacing Bobby at some point. So I'd like to see him keep just progressing and improving. So he's who I'm most excited about.
I'm just bringing the list up again. Who am I most excited about from those four? I would see excited is a very strong word in that situation. I can't personally say that I'm excited about any of them. I like Puna. I mean, who doesn't like Puna? I mean, you'd have to be a real cold individual to not like Puna. The fact that he's called Puna is enough to warrant some pleasure. And he had a very good year. He was probably their second best defender last year after Bobby Wagner was graded highest. I'd say Puna was probably second in that list, maybe even first. And I do put Bobby first because, when you're blitzing the guy 100 times and asking him to basically set the table for Jamal Adams, I think he deserves some leeway. But in terms of who I want to see most out of that is Jordan Brooks, because they spent a first round pick on him. And I want to see whether that was worth it. I want to see more Jordan Brooks. If he plays next year and he looks like 2012 Wagner, then fine. Then you've spent a high pick on a linebacker, and then you've invested in that. And if he plays for 8 to 10 years at a high level, then great. My issue with the Brooks pick is I'm not sure that will happen, that he'll just be a decent linebacker. I mean, and I don't think you need to take a decent linebacker at the end of the first round. That was my point a year ago on that. And it's still, and people say, well, he had a decent rookie year. Yeah, but you can get linebackers later on who have decent rookie years. It's, Wagner and Wright were not first round picks. So I want to see big year from him. I want to see that investment warranted and justified this year. So that's what, if I was going to be excited about anything, I want to see him do that. Who are your personal favorite players on the team? See, this is a question that 5-6 years ago, Robbie, it would have been very difficult to answer. I'm not sure it's that hard these days, but who is your, I'm actually going to have to look at a list of the roster to come up with an answer, but have you got a ready-made answer?
Yeah, DK comes to mind. I mean, I just love his attitude. I love the way he plays. I don't love the drama of wide receivers and the diva aspect of it, how they want and demand the ball. But I mean, it's nice having a guy on the team that's got that size, that speed, and he just, by his interviews and everything, he just wants it. And so you want it for him because he just seems like a guy that, just loves the game. And, he had all these things about him coming out. So he's got a chip on his shoulder, fall into the second round and, how coming off that neck injury and things. I don't know. I just root for the guy. For me, he's really excited. I'm very hesitant to buy wide receiver jerseys, by the way. I just won't do it anymore because I feel like every time I buy a wide receiver jersey, something bad happens. So I'm not going to do it anymore. So I won't buy his jersey. But yeah, he's probably, top of the list for me right now as far as players, and yeah, I mean, a few years ago it would have been easy. I could have answered it a few years ago, but I would have listed off like 7 guys. So it would have been.
See, one thing I really wish that they had was just at least one guy like Cam and Marshawn. I mean, because that's who I would have said a few years ago, because I think it's just that I really like that side of it. That guy who just the other team's fans, they're just scared of playing that guy. And the team that you're playing is scared of playing that guy. And he just sends a shiver down an opponent's spine in so many ways. And like every other fan base wishes they had that guy. You know, how many fan bases have gone, why didn't we draft Cam Chancellor? Why didn't we trade for Marshawn Lynch? And they just created everything, the culture, the tone of that team. And I'm craving somebody who can do that now, Robbie.
I was just about to say they did such a good job that we're now all living in the past because that's all we want is those guys back.
I just want someone who has just got that look in their eye. Like there was this one interview that I've talked about this before on other podcasts that I think we did, where there's a highlights video and it contains this clip and it's Cam Chancellor's biggest hits. And go back and watch it because if you just want to watch football, you know, of a bygone era now, some of those hits would he be chucked out of the game. But he's asked about something and he goes, you know, what is it like when you're delivering a hit or something? And he goes, well, when I know I'm coming and the opponent's coming to me and I'm going to them, it's going to be a scary scene. Or he says something like that, scary scene. And he's smiling as he's saying it. And then right as he finishes his sentence, he just stops smiling. And he just looks terrifying, honestly. It just looks absolutely just like, it's a scary scene. It's a scary scene. And if I was interviewing him, then I would just like, oh my God, you did just shat yourself. I mean, it's just unbelievable that he is. And you know, I almost just want to, I just want to say Cam now, but even though Cam's not there, because I want that kind of player on this team. And there isn't anybody like that. They've become a finesse team. They're a finesse team, the Seahawks now. There isn't anybody, and like people will say, well, there's Chris Carson. He's injured too much to be scary in that way. You know, and I'm probably tempted to be like you and say DK because he's the player that you watch and he excites you, doesn't he? When you see that deep ball going downfield and you think DK's underneath this, you think something special is going to happen. And that's probably why it has to be DK Metcalf. But my God, I just wish they had someone like that scary look in their eyes. They used to have about 10 guys who you just had to look them in the eye and it was scary. Like they just had an evil look in their eye. And they don't, I mean, like Tony McDaniel, for God's sake. Oof. You know, Brandon Browner. You know, even Sherm to an extent.
Yeah, these are guys who just all had chips on their shoulder, right? I mean, that's all they were. I mean, even Earl to an extent, he had a chip on his shoulder. I mean, and he was the 14th pick in the first round.
They just administered pain. Yeah. You know, it was tough playing Seattle. Like, how many times did teams lose the following week? I loved that. I loved that so much about that team. It's just that, you know, whatever happened, they were going to kick your ass. And that's it. They become a little finesse now. Anyway, thank you, M. Webb, for the question. He actually sent this in as well. And seeing as he did a super chat, we'll give him a 2 for 1. He says, I don't think the Seahawks fans realize how washed Richard Sherman is. My best friend is a Niners fan. He would tell me after every game last year how awful Sherman is. He would totally limit our defense. I saw him play against the Rams and thought he played very, very well in that game. And that got me excited. But you have to admit, as two people who like Sherman wanted him back, Robbie, that the injuries over the last 3 years, he's had one healthy season. It puts a question mark there. And if he's still expecting to get top of the range money, then it's tough. If you want to get in and ask a question like M. Webb did, because I'm seeing the questions coming in, super chat away. Do a super chat. We'll jump straight into it. We'll get into that as a topic. Robbie, let's get into the schedule because it's now out and we know it. We had a list of teams before, and I think you list the teams in a random order and you don't put them in a specific row. And it looked like I thought it looked like a decent schedule, a lot less scary after some of the changes that had occurred with certain teams. And then the schedule came out, and I didn't stay up to see it because it was released in 1 o'clock in the morning in England. I woke up the next day and sort of through bleary eyes, as my kids were running amok, I looked at the schedule and I thought, oh dear, because that start to me is harder. It's hard. It's a hard start. Indianapolis on the road. I would rather play Carson Wentz 12 games into the season when he's had a chance to get hurt, nicked up, and I just think that there's a chance that they'll have cooked something up in the many weeks they have before that game to get Carson Wentz through that game. And it's a little bit of like it's his first game. he'll be dead keen on starting Wright. I'm more worried about playing the Colts and him now that it's the first game, I have to say. And I'm not just saying that. Tennessee week 2, I think that was always going to be a challenge. Now, it's a certainly both games are winnable. I'm not saying that they're like nailed on losses or anything. Tennessee's a very winnable game. They've lost some of their receiver threats. They don't have a good defense, but they have the king. They have the king. It may be a good thing to play the king in week 2 because Derrick Henry often takes a bit of time to get up ahead of steam, and then he just steamrolls every opponent in the league. I don't think, I've not looked this up, that he's had the fastest starts though. And I could be completely wrong by that. I'm sure someone will tell me in the comments if I am. But I think it's one of those games that could go either way, frankly. And Ryan Tannehill has played well in Seattle. He almost beat them with the Dolphins a few years ago. So there's that. Just to sort of run through the quick start, Robbie, and I'll bring you in. Minnesota on the road after that. Minnesota, they play the Seahawks every year, which is usually in Seattle. And they're always similar games, aren't they? Very tight, very nip and tuck. Can go either way again. And I just wonder whether playing them on the road this time. And you've also not given Dalvin Cook the chance to miss his 3 games a year, which he always has. Then I think that could be a tricky one. Then at the Niners, I mean, the first 3 of the first 4 games are on the road. That doesn't seem right. That's very difficult. And you could be 1-3 after that because you're on the road so much. Not even because the Seahawks are bad. You could be 1-3 just because it's hard to win on the road against good teams, and they're playing good teams. Then they got the Rams, who are always a pain in the backside for Seattle. Then you go to the Steelers. I mean, that's those first 6 weeks. I certainly wouldn't be surprised. I don't think it's a harsh thing to say, Robbie, that the Seahawks could have a losing record after those first 6 games.
Yeah. So here's my thought. I think I disagree just a little bit. I'm Carson Wentz. I don't care. He just doesn't scare me. He's not a guy that I'm like, oh, now that he's on the Colts team, which, by the way, the Colts, I think, are a good team. I think Wentz is going to hold them back. That's my opinion. And they might have an opportunity to, put some points on the board or whatever, but I still believe in Russ and what, Shane Waldron could do in this offense. And I think we have a lot of pieces. I think the Colts, and by no means am I saying it's going to be an easy game. It's definitely going to be a hard game, but I think that's a winnable game. Titans, I'm kind of in the same boat. Like Derrick Henry is the guy that obviously makes me nervous, but I feel like if we can slow him down and kind of capitalize on just slowing him down and try to make Tannehill beat us, I think we can. And I think, plus you keep in mind, if we have a crowd, this is going to be the first game Seattle's had back since COVID. And, I think people are going to be fired up and it's going to be loud and Tannehill's going to struggle with that. And I think it's going to be crazy. The Vikings are going to be tough. I mean, playing in Minnesota, it's not going to be easy. Kirk Cousins always seems to play fairly well against us as well. Just it's one of those hard games every year, just going to be one of those things where you're just going to have to go in and probably win a nail biter. And I think we could do that as well. Niners, I feel that's the team I'm most scared about, just for the simple fact that they were so injured last year. And, this is an opportunity for them to come back, get healthy. And I just really feel like maybe they're going to be the team to beat in the NFC West right now. I think it really, comes down to the quarterback situation and kind of what happens there. And then the nice thing is after you play the Rams, you have 10 days until you play the Steelers, right? So you have some time to kind of set a big game plan, kind of really look at it, get some guys maybe healthy, some whoever's kind of nicked up or whatever, give them an opportunity to get healthy for that Steelers game, because that Steelers game is going to be tough, but it's also prime time. We got 2 prime time games back to back, Rams and Steelers. So, but that's, it's easy. I could see where you're coming from and say, like, there's a very good chance we could be like 2-4, but I could also see us being 4-2. I mean, I really could.
Yeah, I'm see, I think this comment's coming in. This is a dumb way of looking at it, frankly. It's not Carson Wentz against Seattle, Tannehill against Seattle, Cousins and a rookie QB, which it might even be Jimmy Garoppolo, Stafford, old man Ben. You're playing the Colts, playoff team last year, took it to the Bills in the playoffs, almost won that game. The Titans, AFC Championship 2 years ago, playoffs last year. Derrick Henry, other players. They've been a very competent team for a while now. Hammered the Bills at home last year. Kirk Cousins and the Vikings always play the Seattle close. Cousins has had some good games. I've traveled thousands of miles and watched Kirk Cousins lead a horribly banged up Washington team to a victory in Seattle. You say rookie QB, it could be Garoppolo. The Niners have got a good roster. They have a brilliant head coach, and they've given Seattle trouble over the years. Stafford, yeah, I would be worried about Matt Stafford, and just remember what Sean McVay and the Rams have done to Seattle over the last few years. And you say, oh, old man Ben is a QB. Yeah, well, the Steelers started off, 10-0, 11-0 last year? You go to Pittsburgh's not easy, whether it's Big Ben or not. I mean, it's just, this is ridiculous. I think it's a bad way of looking at it. You're playing good teams, and 4 of your first 6 are on the road. It's nothing. That's all it is. You're playing good teams. 4 of the first 6 are on the road. It's really difficult to win on the road in the NFL. Now, people can talk around it. Like someone's just said, well, the Titans are due for a regression. Well, maybe the Seahawks are due for a regression. Why is the Titans due for a regression? Like, to me, it's a really tricky start. Now, people can, and you've just trying to do a good job there, Robbie, of trying to sort of give the positive slant on it. Well, there's this and there's this and there's this. I just think it just needs to be acknowledged as a tough start. And when you have starts like,
I think our whole schedule is tough. I mean, really, you look at it, it's tough, like all the way through. I mean, there's some tough games, and it is a tough start. By that many road games is tough, and like you said, winning on the road is hard. But I think we proved last year that we won on the road more than we won at home last year. So I think that's also, I think that could be a good sign going forward, like how we're playing on the road. Again, without fans, it's different. So that's why I also think that second game against the Titans, having a full Seattle crowd back at Lumen Field is going to be, I think it's going to be a difference maker. There's little things I can see as positives and some changes, but yeah, I mean, and for me, it's not really about Big Ben with the Steelers. I'd be more worried about Najee Harris, to be honest. Like, that fresh running back, something to prove. I don't know. I mean, yeah, there's I'm not by any means saying that this is an easy schedule or whatever. This is very, very tough start, and I definitely hear you and acknowledge that. I'm trying to see some other aspects of it too. That
I just think it's really tough, Robbie. I just think it's a really tough. It's a tough start, and the Alex guys in there saying they've given Vegas given like something the easiest schedule in the NFL. Well, 4 of the first 6 on the road, and then you have the Saints, Jacksonville. I would hope that they would win that game, but you never know. At Packers, I mean, you just can't judge that, because if it's Aaron Rodgers, it's a really, if that's Aaron Rodgers, Robbie, I'm chalking that down to a loss right now. The Seahawks never win in Green Bay with Rodgers, and when it happens, great. I have to see it to believe it. Arizona, I would expect them to beat Arizona, but division rival. Washington, I'd expect them to win at Washington, but I think they overachieved last year, and they're pretty similar. They've kind of just added to their defense and swapped Alex Smith for Fitzmagic, haven't they? San Francisco, who knows what they're going to be. At Houston, very winnable, you would hope. At Rams, always difficult for Seattle. Chicago and Detroit at home, you would hope they would win those 2, and then Arizona on the road to finish. I think it's a really challenging, the way that it's built and put together. It's harder than it looked when Jeff and I just kind of like looked at the collection of teams. And I think that start is the key thing, because if you do start and get behind the 8 ball early, you're constantly playing catch up. That's the thing. I always kind of think when you are trying to be a real contender, you don't have many lives. If you want to go for sort of like the top seedings and win a division, you don't have too many lives. You can lose the odd game here and there, but ultimately you've got to keep going. You've got to keep going. You've got to kind of have like your lives saved, like a computer game. You've got to keep your energy so that when you drop a game later in the year that maybe you don't expect, or you lose a close game, it doesn't damage you too much. If you get behind the 8 ball early, then when you're down the road, you don't have as much leeway and enough space to drop a game unexpectedly, like that Giants game last year, where all of a sudden you think, well, we didn't expect to lose that one. And you do, and it costs you the first seed. So I think that's a very, very difficult start. I think getting through it, I don't think 3-3 start would be a disaster for Seattle, frankly, looking at that. And yet, all right, you hope that they get more. The pure point that I'm making is that if and like there are one or two people in the comment section who are wearing the blue and green tinted glasses there, is that yes, we can talk out why they might win this game and they might win that game. There is a chance that they have a difficult start. That's really it from this schedule. And that's the slight concern that I would have with it. On sort of a note of Seattle's prospects, Robbie, there were a couple of power rankings that came out today. Now, power rankings are kind of hit and miss, aren't they? You know, they're real hit and miss. And if anyone else has a question like M Webb does and wants us to put it on the screen, super chat away. A couple of power rankings have come out, like I say, hit and miss. One from PFF, one from ESPN. And ESPN has Seattle ranked 8th, which is one place above the Niners in 9th. These are the teams ahead of Seattle. Cleveland in 7, Baltimore 6, Green Bay 5. Obviously, this is dependent on what happens now at Rodgers. LA Rams 4, Buffalo 3, Tampa Bay 2, Kansas City 1. I think really it's hard to look beyond. I think that 3, and you can put them in any order that you want, really. Kansas City, Tampa Bay, Buffalo are the 3 that I would sort of put at the top of any power ranking. I think if Rodgers stays in Green Bay, you could put them at 4 instead of the Rams because they did just towel the Rams in the playoffs. But then after that, I think it's a bit of a jumbled mess, and I don't think I'd ever have any kind of confidence to put Seattle higher than ESPN has there of 8th. I think that is fair. But there is quite a lot of unknown outside of maybe those top 4 or 5 teams, I would say.
Yeah, man, I kind of agree. Like power rankings, especially at this time of the year, it's like it's just all speculation and guess. I guess that's what power rankings really are, anyways. But yeah, I think 8 seems about right. Like I'm not mad about it. Like I'm like, oh, we're a better team than that, or oh, I don't know, we're not as good. I just think it's probably about right. And yeah, I'll gander, take a gander at power rankings here now and then. But for me, I'd rather look at the box score, see where we're at in the standings, the rankings. That's where it really matters to me. I want that number 1 seed in the NFC. I want that home field advantage all the way through the playoffs. So that's all I really care about. But in general, I think ESPN probably got pretty close for me. I think you're right. The top 3, those are the top 3. And I think, you could interchange, especially with Buffalo, if Josh Allen continues to progress and get better and better, they could really jump up and be even, they could challenge Kansas City for sure. So for me, I think it really comes back to just, that jumbled mess that you're talking about. Like it could even with the Packers, I think it's the same thing. Like even with Rodgers coming back, I think they're such a hot mess right now that it could come back. Even if Rodgers does come play, it could really mess them up. So we'll see. Again, for me, it's the Niners they were so injured last year, and I know they were so good the year prior. I just want to see how they come back and do it. And they're the team that they just for me are that unknown. They make me nervous.
I think Rodgers. I'd love to know what Rodgers' end game is with this because I don't see the Packers giving him away, and if they're not going to give him away, then is somebody going to offer multiple first-round picks for a guy in his late 30s? I don't know about that, and it would benefit Denver to get. I mean, Denver seems to be the team that most closely linked with Aaron Rodgers. It would benefit them to go and get him, but at what cost? When you're a new GM and you've just come in, and is he going to win you a Super Bowl? Are you buying a Super Bowl with Rodgers? Maybe, but he's only won 1 in his career. Is the Broncos roster in totality better than the Packers right now? I don't know. So you weigh it up from both perspectives. If he goes to Denver, he's going to play for a very old school, bit of a misery guts, sad sack of a head coach. Is that what he wants? I can't imagine that's what he wants. And it may not be quite as dynamic as the Matt LaFleur offense where he's just won MVP. So I don't really know what's going to happen there. But I will say this, is that if he comes back and he plays, I would expect the Packers and Aaron Rodgers to be exactly what they've been for the last few years. I think he is a player who can handle the chaos. And I think and he's just so good. I mean, like he's an absolute arse, but like He is.
Yeah, but
he is a legendary quarterback.
How does Matt LaFleur handle that? Like, you know what I mean? Like, what if he makes a decision that pisses Rodgers off, and then all of a sudden it just becomes a thing? I think
they drafted Jordan Love a year ago.
I know, but that's what I'm saying. They're on the cusp of being like a total train wreck. Like, and it could happen during the season if he comes back. I don't know. It's tough.
I don't see that. I think that the way they handled the Love thing last year suggests to me that they will get through this. If he comes back and he plays, then I think they'll be fine. It's whether or not he comes back and plays, but I don't know what he does if he doesn't come back and play. That's the thing. It's like it's very easy to say, "Oh, I'm going to go away and do Jeopardy," and then when it actually comes to making the decision as to whether you're going to do that or not, that's hard. And I can't imagine, as much as he may have enjoyed that stint on Jeopardy, that when he sat there hosting Jeopardy for the rest of his life, that he's thinking, and the NFL's going on, and he's thinking, I could be out there potentially winning another Super Bowl. I'm not sure that he'll think, should I have done? I'm just the MVP, for God's sake, and now I'm doing Jeopardy. And there's the thought, all of a sudden you're thinking in your mind, I'm doing this forever until I stop working now. And it's Jeopardy, I imagine, can be it might seem great to do it for a week. Doing it for 20 years might not be quite as fun for someone who's already a multi-millionaire. So we'll see. I still think if I had to put money on it, I would put money on Rodgers playing for the Packers this year. But it feels like maybe the Packers are taking the same approach as the Seahawks right now. It's like, let the storm ride out, see how it goes, see what happens. If he comes back, then I think the Packers, and this is what PFF had on their power rankings, they also had the Chiefs at number 1, Tampa Bay at number 2, Buffalo at 3. I think those 3 are sort of written in stone. They Packers at 4, which is what I would go with right now, with Aaron Rodgers still on the team. They've gone with the Ravens 5, Rams 6, Saints 7, Browns 8, Niners 9, and Seahawks 10. So I think what the takeaway from this is that the sort of the people who write these things kind of see the Rams as the team to beat in the NFC West. That's what I'm seeing. And that they see the Seahawks and Niners as not too far behind, which is, I think, probably a fair way of looking at it, Robbie. I mean, the Seahawks, they won the NFC West last year, but what happened in the playoffs? So I think it's fair to put the Rams with a new quarterback, still with Donald, still with Ramsey, as the sort of the leader in the clubhouse right now for the NFC West as we're going into this season. But then they're also acknowledging that there's going to be a big challenge, I think, from the 2 teams who finished 2nd and 3rd last year. I think they finished 2nd and 3rd. No, the Niners finished. They finished below the Cardinals, didn't they? So,
yeah, the Cardinals finished higher.
But they're the 2nd and 3rd best teams if the Rams are number 1.
Yeah, I think the only real surprise out of that list would have been the Saints being at, what did you say, 7?
The Saints?
Yeah.
Saints at 7, yeah.
I mean, the Saints are a good team. The quarterback, I just don't know, man. Taysom Hill or Jameis Winston. For me, I'm with Breeze. I could say, yeah, okay, 7, but I don't know. With those quarterbacks, it'd be tough for me to give it. But they are a really good team. But for me, I think that was just a little too high. But what do I know? It's just power rankings. So that would be the only thing I'd say on that one.
I can see that with the Saints. The Saints are a funny one, though, aren't they? Because Sean Payton's, isn't he unbeaten with backup quarterbacks in the last 5 years or something like that? Whenever Drew Brees doesn't play, like Teddy Bridgewater, he won every game with Teddy Bridgewater. He won every game with Taysom Hill. It's strange, and I'm interested to see the Saints this year because they're going to be a big example as to how important spending big money on a quarterback is, because their roster's quite thick and deep, isn't it? But they don't have the quarterback, but they're not paying big money for a quarterback. They're going to go with Jameis Winston or Taysom Hill. And it's a direct sort of opposition to what the Packers and the Rams and the Seahawks are doing with their big name, big money quarterbacks. And they're going cheap at quarterback, loaded roster elsewhere. If that succeeds, I wonder how that will shape next offseason, especially with the
follow suit. Yeah, I could see that. They do have a loaded roster, and that's why they're a good team. And I could see them being, within the top 10. I just, with that quarterback situation, it'll be interesting. And like I said, if that is true that he's undefeated, it's easy to, I think, game plan, maybe a game or two with different quarterbacks but to do it over the course of a whole year, and when teams know what you're going to do, and I don't know. I don't know. We'll see. It's going to be interesting. You're right. I don't know. I just find it hard to think that, Jameis Winston or Taysom Hill, game planning for those guys, knowing that they're the starters, compared to game planning against someone with Drew Brees, where you have like a whole arsenal of things that they can do. And then these guys, I feel like, are a little more limited, but yeah.
We'll see. I mean, it's one of those. I mean, I think Taysom Hill, I call him Taysom Tebow. I think he's pretty limited, but I think Jameis, and Jameis is Jameis. He's looked great at times in his career, and he's looked like a turnover machine at times in his career. I just think he could be interesting because Peyton is clearly a great offensive coach. And yeah, all right, teams can game plan for him and then kind of think, well, Jameis does this and Jameis does that, and they can find trends that they can exploit and stuff like that. But the Peyton factor is big for me, and he could elevate. This is a guy who was number 1 overall pick a few years ago, still a good age. I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens, and I always hope that it is Winston, because I want to see how that all plays out rather than them, persevere with Taysom, because I thought it was bloody boring watching him play quarterback.
Will you bring up that WWE 2K? Don't sleep on famous Jameson. Yeah, and here's the thing: I'm not sleeping on the guy. I just, for me, I guess what I was just. This is why within the power rankings, I think it's just a little too high right now because of the interception factor and the fact that he, has been let go by the Bucs, and he just had been proven, he did still throw 30 plus touchdowns, but he also threw 30 plus interceptions. But if Sean Payton if he can fix that, then they're dangerous. They're 100% dangerous. I agree. But
here's what they're saying though, in those the people who wrote those power rankings, at least, are saying this. They're saying that Sean Payton, with a lesser quarterback but with a decent roster, is better than teams like Seahawks with Russell Wilson and Pete Carroll running the show. That's what they're saying. It's a review of Payton, and to an extent, it's a review of Pete, because I don't think it's an
interesting review. I just don't know.
Because I tell you what, I think if you put Peyton in Seattle and Pete in New Orleans, I don't think that the Seahawks would be behind the Saints. I think the Seahawks would be higher. I think that the Seahawks with someone like Peyton and Russell and them together and all of that, I think that it gets them higher. And I think this is a big year for Pete. And I think that Pete's a defensive-minded coach and a culture builder. Let's see a great defense. The Seahawks haven't had a good defense, really, for a long, long time. They need to have a better defense this year. And that's on Pete to make that happen. And look, Russell, people will talk about Russell all year because of what happened this offseason. And they will say he needs to be better, and they will judge how the offense is playing. And when the offense is rocking, we're going to hear one thing. And if Russell has a bad game, we're going to hear another thing. If there's a stretch of the season where teams are finding the Seahawks to be a bit predictable, we're going to hear about that. We are going to hear every angle of this is going to be analyzed within an inch of its life because of what happened this offseason. And that's just the way it is. And there's not been no one's drawn a line under it. And I'm going to come on to that to end this broadcast, this stream in a second. But this is ultimately, I hope that Shane Waldron and Russ and the fact that they spent their top pick on a receiver and they brought in Gerald Everett, their 2 big off-season moves were Everett and Gabe Jackson. Their next one was D. Eskridge. They've got Shane Waldron. They're tapping into that McVay stuff. I think I have to hope and believe that the offense is going to be better than it was and more consistent than it was. It's the defense. It's Pete. It's up to them to do better. It's no good having historically bad defense for 6 weeks, then being a tad better, and then sort of thinking that you've turned a corner because you get to play Colt McCoy and guys like that. The defense has to be consistent. It has to be tougher. It has to create more pressure without resorting to blitzing all the time. It has to know what it's doing. It can't. I'm a little bit worried, I have to admit, that they're changing everything. They're changing everything, but they're changing things so much for one player in Jamal Adams. And in the bare fronts that they're going to use. And it's like, it's okay to put a scheme together that makes him succeed the most. But then he has injuries. And then what happens the week after if he's not there? And you've changed the whole defense for this guy. And is the pass rush good enough? Is there are so many things here. I said last week, the defense needs to be like 16th in the league in week 1 and 16th in the league in week 18 or 17 or whatever it is by the end of the year too, Robbie. And it can't go beyond that. They can't have the 20th best defense again this year or the 30th best defense. They need to be somewhat at least average on defense in order to have the season that they want to have. And that's on Pete. It's up to him. I think there's been a bit of complacency on this defense. He has to do better. The defense has to be better. That's where your investment has been. Jamal Adams, Jordan Brooks, LJ Collier, Marquise Blair. This is where you've spent all of your high picks. It's time for that to deliver now and actually show something, because it's not been good enough for too long.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. And I really think that the defense will be better this year. Maybe that's just hopeful or wishful thinking, but I something in my gut tells me they're going to be better this year. I don't know why. I just felt like they are. And I like what they did, getting the guys that they did and bringing back Carlos and those kind of things. And, the more I read about, Trey Brown and stuff, the more excited I get, the feistiness and the chip on his shoulder. And, this is what I want to see in my cornerbacks. And so I'm excited about, what our defense can bring. And hopefully it's not this, same shenanigans that we had last year where it was, we just need them to be average, right? I mean, we don't need them to be great, right? I mean, we need them to, hopefully win us some games and let the offense win the games. When we have the, we got Russ. That's what we got. This is where we spent. You said we spent 3 first or bunch of picks on offensive side and our right.
Well, let me ask you a question, Robbie. Let me ask you a question, because you said that you feel it in your bones that they're going to be better this year.
Yeah, I just feel like they're going to be better this year.
Let me ask you this then. Do you trust Pete Carroll and Ken Norton Jr. to produce a better defense? Because quite frankly, I don't.
Yeah, I mean, I think you kind of know my opinion on this. Like, right, I think it's time for Pete to probably step down. And I think we said this last year. Probably better that he takes an advisory role within the Seahawks and let somebody else run the team. The actual football team. Let him, different head coach, different defensive coordinator. Or he takes on the head coaching responsibility and leaves it to a defensive coordinator to actually call the plays. I still believe in Pete. I still believe that he has the ability to do it. I don't know if he has the. You put me in a hot spot here because I don't know if he. Yeah, I want him to. I'll just say I want it, so that makes me. Maybe that's how I'm swaying myself into thinking that he can.
Yeah, I think this, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with sort of wanting the Seahawks to do well, and therefore.
Obviously, I want them to do well. I always want them to do well, but I think I'm trying to be realistic about it.
But when asked in May, whether you think something's going to work out, and saying I hope so, more so than I definitely believe it's going to happen, is fine. I think my just concern is that it's not like, well, they've had a couple of down years now and they're trying to get this back. It's like the defense has not been good. Like without the elite, without the LOB and the D line and young Bobby and young KJ, the defense has been. Well, look at it. It's not. It doesn't turn the ball over enough. It doesn't create enough pass rush. They don't have enough overall. Yeah, it's nice they brought Carlos Dunlap back. Yeah, I hope Trey Brown's can have an impact. Although I don't know if he's going to start this year. I mean, they've spent money on a Keller Witherspoon. He would have to beat him out in order to start out that outside corner. So it's hard for me to sort of, that's what holds me back. I have real hope and optimism that Shane Waldron can have an impact, and that the pieces they've put together, including a new receiver and a new tight end who's more of a pass catcher than a blocker, can create a much less predictable offense that can do more than just have 6 weeks of greatness and then be flat as a pancake for the next 10 games. I think on just to finish though, on defense, I don't see it. It's kind of that the things we're hoping is that the pass rush is going to get better, but they've swapped January for Kerry Hyder. That's the only real change. That Jamal Adams is going to be better but they can still be using these bare fronts, that he can stay healthy and do that. Yeah, that's something to hope for. I need to see it, and I don't see the cornerbacks. I don't see a cornerback who I think there's your guy who's going to get you 5 picks this year.
Yeah. I guess for when I'm looking at the team as a whole, when I start thinking about the defensive transactions they made this year, I feel better than we did last year. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. Like last year at this time, we were in that flux, like, what the hell are we doing? Like, why aren't we doing this? Why aren't we done? At least this year they went out and they kind of tried to attack the position a little bit and make it feel like they were doing something on the defense side of the ball. And I like the players that they brought in. And I feel like they've got a good mix of rotation. I would still like to see them do something on the defensive line. I still think that there's a move to be made there. I think, a veteran defensive line guy should probably be added to the team. But I like what they did. That's why I feel like we're going to be better. Again, it's all speculation and gut feeling right now. I just like more what we did this year than we did last year. And so that's why I feel like this year we can be a little bit better.
And just to put a bow on, my take on this, I think that I've just listed some of the positional concerns. I'll go back to what I said at the start, that my biggest concern is I think if you're going to run this bare front and you're going to design things and you're going to do things to accommodate Jamal, I wish they'd have gone out and said, Ken, love you, man, we want to make you like assistant head coach or give you a prominent role that is not defensive, not calling plays on the defense. And we're going to go and get somebody who is used to running a system that utilizes a player like Jamal Adams more. There's a whole bunch of, we talked about it midway through the season, Robbie, last year. Go and get somebody from the Belichick tree. They use these hybrid safeties all the time, and they're very creative with their safeties. And it's Belichick and it's Joe Judge who have done the best job defending the Rams. They're the teams that, they've done it in Super Bowls. The Giants played the Rams very close last year, playing the same kind of system that the Patriots did in their Super Bowl win against the Rams when they held them to 3 points. It's like if they'd have got somebody from that kind of tree or has got some kind of connection there who can implement that type of defense and put them as the play caller on defense, I'd be sat here and going, they've knocked it out of the park because they've got Waldron and then they've got the defensive Waldron, if that makes sense. They've got the defensive answer. I don't know if I trust Ken Norton Jr. to bring this all together. If he's the play caller on defense, I don't know if I trust him to do that. I think Pete has. Yes, I think he is. He is. I don't think Pete's the play caller. Pete is he's almost the patriarch, isn't he? He's the kind of the guy on the sideline who is he takes ownership of everything. But as we've heard from Pete before, he's having a say in everything. He's talking about what they should be doing on offense. He's talking about what plays they want to do. He's talking about, and he sort of has control over everything. But he's certainly not stood there with the play sheet making the defensive calls. He's overseeing everything. I think that sometimes hampers the Seahawks because I think it is better to have maybe a clear offensive game plan than let offensive coordinator go and execute that. A clear defensive game plan, let the defense, and then the head coach can either be one of those guys or he comes in and he has the input and he dictates it and he manipulates game plans on the hoof and then they adjust. I think the problem is that there's often like, should we be doing that? Or should we be doing that? And you've kind of got two guys trying to do it. And then you've got another voice there. And in the past, they had Cable and Bevel doing stuff. And now they've got Mike Solari and a run game coordinator, I think, and an offensive coordinator. And it can be a bit of a too many cooks sort of thing. So that's my main issue. I would have liked to have seen maybe Ken Norton Jr., who I like, obviously, Seahawks. I think he's a Seahawks hero for what he was, for being part of the team that won the Super Bowl and getting those linebackers ready and clearly much loved. Would have loved to have seen him stayed. But if you're going to run this defense, I'd have liked to have seen somebody else come in who could also perhaps have just offered a bit of a different insight that you could just say, go and run this Jamal Adams inspired defense for us moving forward. We've got another super chat. One in right at the end before we get into our final topic to close. If there is any more, we will squeeze them in too. Don't feel like you can't chuck one in right at the last minute. But Joe's got in touch and says, so if PC is going to stick with the bare front, with Dunlap at Leo, Hyder at the 5 technique, Pooner at the 3, Woods and Monet at 1, and Taylor at the Sam, will they limit Adams' blitz attempts and use him more in 2 deep coverage? Well, the thing is, Joe, is that the bare front is specifically designed to enable a player like Jamal Adams to blitz a lot and to attack and to create pressure. That's more or less the point of the bare front, is to utilize someone like Adams. So if they're going to run the bare front a lot, I would suggest that means that no, they're not going to put him in coverage more. We'll see. We'll see what they come up with. I don't, it doesn't have to be 100% this way. They could steal some from the bare front and have a kind of hybrid scheme and all of this. And it's always kind of, there are hybrid schemes all over the league. So they could a bit of this, a bit of that, and a bit of the other. But we'll see. That bare front is designed to have Jamal Adams as an attack dog, essentially. So I would not expect, maybe he won't blitz 8.2 times a game or 10 times a game like he was earlier in the season, but he might still be blitzing 5-6 times a game. I personally hope he's not blitzing 8 times and it is more like 5 or 6, but we will see. We will see. We've got to wait a little while to find out. Final topic then, Robbie. And you can still chuck a super chat in at the end if you want, as I mentioned. But this is the final topic otherwise. Mark Sessler has written a piece about what every team needs to sort of get done between now and the end of the season. And he says, he talked about Jamal Adams briefly, but then he went on to this. He said, Russell Wilson's annoyance with the organization feels ancient because it's roughly 7 agitated quarterback storylines ago, which is quite funny. But has it gone away, he says. Seattle's front office swung a trade with Las Vegas for guard Gabe Jackson, inked tight end Gerald Everett, and re-signed bruising runner Chris Carson. I said rapport building moves, but it actually says rapport building moves, but that's, yeah, it's funny. Rapport building moves, but the team also listened to a generous trade offer for Wilson from the Bears. The faint drumbeat of separation lingers in Seattle's subconscious. Russell's camp has quieted, but these things never end well. Stay tuned, is what he said. I still think that it would be very naive of Seahawks fans to think that this is done just because it's done for this year. I don't think it is done. I think the Seahawks, to some extent, are on notice. I think that it will not take much for this to all resurface again. I would bet good money that at some point before or during training camp, Mike Florio will put something out there, or Colin Cowherd, about how they have to play this sort of offense. Otherwise, this is all going to come back, just to sort of throw a little nugget out there before the season starts. And I think it is going to be a very, very important. This could be Russell Wilson's last season. And you were talking about the Saints. Teams like that in a year's time, if it doesn't work with famous Jameis or Taysom Tebow, they're going to be looking for a big fish to land. And that's when those teams, and Raiders are the same, they were one of the listed. Yeah, the Bears are out of it now because they've traded for Justin Fields. But, you know, this could become a topic again, Robbie, and it's going to be interesting to see what happens with all of this. And I still think it's something that we have to remember going into this season. It is not done and dusted as much as people might want it to be.
Yeah, I don't think it's over. I mean, here's how it becomes over: if the Seahawks win the Super Bowl. In my opinion, that's the only way that this gets squashed, and that's the only way it's going to go away. And you're right. This could be Wilson's last year in a Seahawks uniform. I kind of felt that way for a while, and I'm going to still continue to feel that way. And I really, it reminds me a little bit of the Packers and Rodgers situation. Like, that's what I think. I don't think it'll be swept under the rug kind of like they were, because I know that, in my opinion, if something goes wrong, like if Rodgers doesn't like a play, he's not going to be afraid to say, well, that's not what I wanted to do. And I feel like maybe that might happen this year with Wilson. He might not come out and publicly say it, but his agent will. And I don't think this is going away. I think this is something that's going to probably linger on a little bit. And the only way it does go away, we have to win the Super Bowl. And or maybe Russ wins the MVP and then he's happy about it. But I don't know. I don't think it's going away. I think this is something that is going to be something we're going to be talking about again next offseason. You're muted.
Oh, dear. I think if he's in the MVP conversation and they're more successful in the playoffs, so ultimately not losing in the wild card or the divisional round, they got to the NFC Championship and the offense was consistent even without the MVP. I think that would be somewhat that could go a long way to making Russell Wilson feel somewhat satisfied. But
I think we'd still be talking about it. I think if it's completely squashed, to be completely squashed,
it might be. I mean, I think if they have a really good offensive year and then they get to the NFC Championship and they lose, then I could imagine afterwards the talk being all like, they're in the right path now. They're going in the right direction. They're going to do this rather than it being Wilson wants out. And he's desperate to get out. So I don't think they necessarily have to just win the Super Bowl or get to the Super Bowl in order to quash this. But I think that it's going to be very difficult to quash it if they have a, not a similar year to last year, but if it's kind of more of the same what it's been for the last few years, where Wilson carries the team in a lot of games, and they have inconsistent moments and they don't do what he wants. And if they have a bad day and then Pete Carroll reins everything in and slows everything down, the tempo and everything again, that could be an issue. But it's something that I think, it's just, every now and again, we're going to have to sort of just bring this up and say it's not completely diffused and it will still be a thing. Anyway, thank you to everybody for listening. Thank you to Robbie for joining us again. I'm going to see how, with these streams, people like them. Let us know in the comment section on YouTube. Hit the like button. Don't forget to subscribe. Press the little bell because you'll know when we're doing them. How regular we do streams for the rest of the summer now will depend on the demand. If people want them, we can do them. Obviously, there's not a whole bunch of new talking points every week like there is during the season. So we'll see what the reaction is to this. Let us know in the comment section. Like I say, like, subscribe, get involved, and let us know what you think. Thank you again. Thank you to Robbie, and we'll see you next time.